Hi, this is Grover with Blue Collar Codes, the Quick and Dirty, going over Episode 9, Conditional Statements in Python. If you wish to follow along, there is a link to the GitHub repository in the video summary. Just look for episode9.py. So the building blocks of a conditional statement in Python involve the keyword if, and then you have your actual conditional statement, colon, and then underneath and also tabbed would be the code block that you want executed if that condition is true. And then you also have the elif or else if. So if you wish to link if else conditional statements to check multiple things at once, then you use elif and then another conditional statement, colon, code block again, and then lastly you put in an else colon if you wish for code to run if none of the other conditions holds true, kind of like a default condition to run. So a bit more on that down here once we get into some examples. But here a list of the way to compare objects. In Python you have the comparison operators with equal to, which are the W equal signs, not equal to, less than, greater than, etc. And then if you wish to combine conditional statements in one if statement, then you would use and, or not. And then you also have membership operators to check to see if an object is in a collection or a container. And then you have the empty container check, which basically returns true if there are objects within the container or false if there aren't. And then you have identity operators, which is or is not, and this basically checks to see if the referenced object from those variables is the same one in memory. So let's say if you did A equals or is A D, then they would point to the same object in memory. So we're going to go over some examples here, and I'm going to go over a bit of a more complex example where you're combining multiple if-else statements within a one-liner and then assigning that to a variable. So here you have some basics. Is A equal to 1, and it would hold true. And then an example of the if, elif, else statement. So if A is less than B, then this code block would run and none of the others would run. Else, if this is false and this is true, then this code block would run. And then lastly, if neither of these are true, then the else statement would run, this code block. And you can add more than just one elif that can be limitless. So the one more complex conditional statement I wanted to go over that you might see out in the real world, although it kind of makes code relatively not readable, is this one right here, where I'm assigning x, the variable or the object 25, if a is greater than b. So that's just, remember the syntax here is it's resultant value that you want to have assigned, then conditional statement. And then again you have else, the value you want to assign, and then another conditional statement. And then you can combine them as well, as you see here, using and. And then lastly, you put an else, and then the 5 would be assigned if none of these end up being true. So that's an example of one that's a bit more complex and a bit harder to discern what is going on or when it's failing than, say, spreading it all out in this fashion. A few of the other things to go over would be the in. So if A, the object, is in the list L, it'll be true, meaning it'll go through that list and it'll check for that exact object. There are cases where it might not compare things properly, but that's going to be a use-by-use case. Here you also have the example of the if it's empty or not empty. So since L has values in it, then this would end up being true. If L has values, then it'll print L is not empty. Else it'll print L is empty. And then you have L2 here, which is indeed empty, created as an empty list. This will return false. So you'll end up actually printing out this value here. So the last thing to go over would be, we already covered this a bit earlier, the is statement. Is it the same object in memory? And then you have the isInstance. And this basically checks whether or not this variable's object or the referenced object is of this type. Now this isn't something that you're really going to want to use very often, but it might be useful to you in the beginning as you're learning to get a better idea of what types are being output when you're using certain built-in functions or transforming things. So this was Blue Collar Codes. Again, Grover, thanks for joining, and we'll go over some more Python next time.